This bar's nutrition is off by 80%. This is either a breakthrough in science or they're using the oldest marketing trick in the book. Just lie about it, baby. The bar says 150 calories, and the lawsuit says 275 calories. But which side is correct? The real story happens when a company gets to redefine what a calorie actually is. Hi, I'm Dr. Neeraj Patel. I'm a physician, I'm an entrepreneur, and I also got scammed by David bars. I spend a lot of time thinking about how health products actually work, and sometimes how they're marketed too. Because this is exactly the kind of thing that sounds simple until you actually look at it. David didn't get attention because it made the best tasting bar on earth. It got attention because the numbers looked absurd. 28 grams of protein, very low sugar, very low fat, and only around 150 calories. And in nutrition culture, that's not a snack. That's an arbitrage opportunity. It promises the emotional experience of a treat with the math of discipline. In January of 2026, a class action lawsuit was filed in the Southern District of New York. The central allegation was brutally simple. The David bars contained way more calories than what it said on the label. According to the complaint, testing from an accredited lab actually found several flavors anywhere between 263 to 275 calories per bar. And as far as the fat goes, allegedly, it wasn't the 2 grams written on the back of the bar. It was actually closer to 12 to 13 and a half grams. If those numbers are right, this is not a rounding error. It is the entire value proposition of a David bar breaking. Now here's when things get interesting. David's response is not simply, the lab is wrong. It's closer to, the lab may be measuring gross energy, not what the body actually absorbs. That distinction matters because the bar uses EPG, which is a fat replacement ingredient designed to behave differently from ordinary fat. So the defense isn't magic, it's metabolism, apparently. EPG is the magic ingredient here. Very roughly, it's a fat substitute engineered so it behaves differently in the body than ordinary fat. All that means is that the energy a machine detects may not map cleanly onto the energy you actually absorb. And to be fair, that is a real scientific category. Not everything that looks like a calorie in a lab becomes a calorie in the same way in a human. And that still doesn't answer the regulatory question. And it definitely doesn't answer the trust question. This is the part I think that matters most. A nutrition label is not a white paper. It's a compressed signal to help ordinary people make compressed decisions. So if the product says 150 calories, the consumer assumption, or my assumption, is not under one's interpretation of partial absorption involving a novel fat replacement, this may be directionally true. The assumption is just, this bar's 150 calories. And that gap between the technical defense and consumer understanding is where trust usually breaks. A bar like this doesn't win on flavor alone. It wins because the math feels almost unfair. And that creates a pretty strong incentive structure. If your product's only meaningfully better because the label looks miraculous, then label interpretation is not a side issue. It's the entire business model. And once that's true, scientific nuances can become marketing infrastructure. This is one of the most recurring themes we see in modern wellness. A product has this complicated mechanism and a very simplified claim. And then the market that desperately wants a simple version to be true grabs onto this product. That doesn't mean the product is fake. It just means that the most marketable version of that product is often cleaner than the actual evidence. And in nutrition, the cleaner the numbers, the stronger the temptation. My read is this. The company's defense isn't completely insane. EPG is real. Metabolized energy is a real concept, and it's absolutely possible for food science to get ahead of consumer intuition. But if the public evidence is a disputed label on one side and no transparent human data specific to the finish bar on the other, I wouldn't treat the 150 calorie claim as settled fact. I would treat it as a brand's preferred interpretation. And those aren't the same thing. When a product feels too perfect, the question shouldn't be, is it fake? The better question is, which part of the story had to be simplified to make it sell? In health, the most dangerous thing isn't always a lie. Sometimes it's a technically defensible number that people understand, but in a wrong way. If you like this type of content, please like the video, subscribe, and we'll dig into more health products and health companies as time goes by. See you in the next one.